Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. Since the early 1980s, over 2,000 crop circle formations have been discovered in 30 countries, and new ones are being reported every month. Theories about where they come from range from weather anomalies to extraterrestrials to crazed hedgehogs doing a mating dance. Well, obviously, some theories are more credible than others, but the fact remains that something is happening in fields around the world that no one can fully explain. The stories of unexplained designs appearing mostly in the farm fields of England hit an all-time high in 1990. News media from around the world were quick to hail these enigmatic circles and lines as the strangest scientific discovery of the 20th century. For a brief period, crop circles became the darling of popular culture. But then, two hoaxers stepped forward to claim that they had created the crop circles. And just as quickly as the phenomenon began, the media dropped the crop circle story. The hoax theory stuck, and soon the only people still interested were hardcore theorists and scientists.
Initially, these were simple single circles. But in 1990, the patterns became much more complex, dramatically so, and blew right out of the water some of the early theories.
The early formations were the size of a domestic room. Now you have formation which are almost the size of Central Park, so that we have enormous growth, both in complexity and in size and in numbers.
Michael Green is an archaeologist and architecture historian who is also one of the founding members of the Center for Crop Circle Studies.
We're not a religious cult. We're not a strange, wacky branch of the UFO movement. We are trying to use rational means to establish what's going on. And the first thing we learnt, and this year in particular, is that there are a few hoaxes.
I'm Dave Chorley, this is Doug Barr, and we are the two people that have created the crop circles in 1978 through to today.
The most impressive thing to me, and the reason why I actually stopped and listened to what they had to say, was not really what they told me, but what they did in the field. Because when they did the demonstration out in Sussex at Chilgrove, the formation itself was quite messy, but it was amazing how quickly it happened. In 45 minutes, this huge formation was laid down, and that's even accounting for the fact that half the world's press were tramping around it as well with them, asking them for interviews at the same time.
But Doug and Dave had only done a few of the hundreds of circles that had been done, and from the evidence, their public demonstrations in broad daylight, they weren't very good at it. But no one really knew what hoaxers could do and what they couldn't do. And so I thought, well, here's an ideal opportunity for a scientific experiment, and the best way to do it is through a competition.
Biologist and author Rupert Sheldrake did organize a competition. The challenge was to see if anyone could create crop circles that could not be identified as hoaxes. The circles were made at night, and the next day, the contest winners demonstrated their techniques.
What we found was that the standard of artificial circle making was much higher than most people had expected. These people could do very well. The standard was very high indeed, and the most surprising thing was that people could do all this in complete darkness with making very little noise.
I flew the site the next day, and the aerial pictures that we took show some of the centers of these formations displaying exactly the characteristics that the genuine circles have displayed, and exactly the characteristics that many of the experts have said couldn't be done by people. Things like making rings without having a hole in the center where somebody stands. Things like producing a radial effect where the crop splays out from a central point. And the team that won and the team that came second and third produced really marvelous formations, which the judges were very impressed by.
So what they show is that many of the features of crop circles could be hoaxes, but they don't show that they are hoaxes. And I mean, the analogy that I find most helpful is the fact you can forge a $20 bill doesn't prove that all $20 bills are forgeries.
The first and primary feature which is evident in the genuine phenomenon and not in the hoaxes, is the spiraling fingerprint.
Colin Andrews heads up the Circles Phenomenon Research Group in Brantford, Connecticut. He has co-authored 2 books on crop circles and is believed to have visited more actual crop circle sites than any other researcher.
This particular screen shows clearly the difference between the fingerprint, this is the print at the top here, of the genuine phenomenon, the real phenomenon, and all of those hoaxes which we're hearing so much about these days.
Andrews believes that the most important patterns to be studied are those where the flow of the crops changes direction within a single circle, a pattern no human has yet been able to duplicate in public.
I think the single most convincing argument for a real phenomenon and against the hoax are the effects that the phenomenon are having upon the plants themselves. Dr. Levingood, a well-known physicist in the United States, has discovered changes in the structure of the plants themselves, in cell structure of the plants, molecular structure of the plants on a number of continents.
When a formation hits, it just knocks the heck out of the embryo. They don't grow. The seeds don't develop.
Dr. Levingood has discovered that the cell structure of the crops within a formation are distinctly different from undisturbed crops nearby, and that this new cell structure seriously alters the crop's growth.
Let me get this straight. A plant that is in a formation undergoes an internal change so that seeds taken from that plant grow a different kind of plant or an altered plant?
Altered in both the growth rate and the germination. In some cases, it increases quite significantly.
Some people maintain that hoaxers created not only some, but all of these formations. You buy that?
Oh, God, no. No, this is utterly ridiculous. No. If they had that kind of energy, they wouldn't be wasting it out in the field making impressions in a crop. It'd be a new kind of energy distribution, let's say, that I have never heard of.
Mathematician Gerald Hawkins is another scientist with an intriguing theory. Professor Hawkins made his mark in the 1950s when he came up with an explanation for Stonehenge, still accepted today. Now, Hawkins has devised a mathematical formula relating the crop circles to the notes of a musical scale.
Help us understand that. You're not suggesting that because there's a relationship between the ratios of the crop circles and the ratios of musical tones that you can somehow play the crop circles.
I'm not saying that the crop circles are musical. I'm saying that they follow the same mathematical law as the major diatonic scale. No natural physical process that we know will generate the diatonic scale, which is, of course, the white notes on the piano. Therefore, the only theory that we can put forward is that it's done by human beings. It's all a hoax. But they're clever hoaxes, and if it's not a hoax, then we have a major scientific problem on our hands.
Professor Hawkins has studied the ratios of the sizes of crop circles and found the same ratios between notes in the diatonic scale.
If the music doesn't seem listenable, then it seems to imply there's something beyond music being communicated here.
Yes, it could be a copyright insignia of the primary hoaxers or the crop circle makers, and perhaps they may use this later for further information transmission. But I'm not going to predict what crop circle makers will do next.
Dr. Hawkins, you're implying that if even one of the crop circles is not the work of a hoaxer, that science will have to rethink everything?
I'm afraid so. You only need one in this case, and you have a mystery.
What, of course, stands out clearly now is that we have the uncomfortable fact that this intelligence is almost certainly not human. And this is where people become extremely nervous. The media becomes very nervous. The press becomes extremely nervous. They don't like mysteries like this. One of the reasons that some thinkers have thought might be behind this is the position of the Earth in terms of the terrible damage that is being done by man. Could we be dealing with something which is trying to warn us?
Either it's very skillful hoaxers with a tremendous sense of humor, or it's some non-human intelligence that's completely off the scale of anything that we've contemplated so far. But if they are communications of Gaia or nature or aliens or whatever, if they're communications of some kind from a non-human source, it's not quite clear what they're saying. Their main message so far seems to be, watch this space.
Are we any closer today to unraveling the mystery of what or who created the crop circles? Joining me now is George Wingfield, Director of Field Research and founding member of the Center for Crop Circle Studies in London, England. George, welcome to Sightings.
Hello, Tim.
The crop circles have changed over the years. The shapes have changed, the number have changed. Have you learned anything from those directions?
There's no doubt at all that these are of some sort of intelligent origin, and this appears to be non-human.
What do the circles seem to be leading toward?
I think they are leading us towards an understanding of some other level of intelligence which is not human.
Do you believe, George, that the crop circles are an ancient phenomenon, that they've always been there, they just haven't been accounted for by modern means?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think the crop circles started appearing in quite recent times, probably less than 30 years ago. There may have been a few before that, but very, very few.
For you, do the crop circles inspire hope or fear or merely curiosity?
Well, they certainly inspire hope. I believe whatever is causing the circles is something which is benign. I don't believe there's anything hostile or evil here, which is what some people would have you to believe.
George Wingfield, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim.
And we'll be back with more Sightings in just a moment.